Why airplanes don't fly over volcanoes. Bad weather. We often hear this definition in the context of civilian flight restrictions. But what does it mean in the case of volcanoes? It would seem that there was an eruption somewhere, so what? Don't fly over the crater, and there will be no problems. However, in reality, everything is not so unambiguous. What exactly volcanoes are dangerous for airplanes? We will tell you now. Why don't airplanes fly over volcanoes? Airplanes are one of the safest ways to travel. But when flying over volcanoes, pilots actively avoid this danger zone. In this article, we'll look at the reasons why airplanes avoid flying over volcanoes and what threats they can pose to air traffic. Volcanic emissions and ash. Volcanoes can spew hot gases, ash, lava, and other substances that can cause serious damage to airplanes. Ash in the air can enter engines and damage turbine blades, which can cause loss of thrust or complete engine failure. Ash can also clog aircraft cooling systems and damage electronics. What is the threat? It's all about the fact that the engines of the airliner, caught in the ash cloud, are quickly clogged with small particles. They envelope the elements of the engine, which gradually leads to its stoppage. Thus, due to the impact of high temperatures, ash turns into a substance of vitreous type, which prevents the engines from working properly. Moreover, harmful masses can be carried by the wind over long distances. However, not only dust and ash clouds are dangerous due to the elevation of volcanic vents, even lava spray can damage the liner structure. If the ship starts to lose altitude at all, it can be hit by one of the pillars of lava spewing from the crater. Volcanoes can also spew rocks of different weights and shapes, and collision with them can also damage the hull. Due to such dangerous environmental conditions, flying over erupting volcanoes is strictly forbidden. And if you are interested in what a volcanic eruption looks like from the porthole, watch our video. What happens if a plane flies over an erupting volcano? It is known that a volcanic eruption paralyzes all possible air transportation, the paths of which pass directly over the volcano or in the zone of its eruption. This is due to powerful lava and ash emissions that disable vital airliner systems. Although airplanes today are designed to keep their passengers safe in any situation, there are no protective measures in case a flight is over an erupting volcano. On this basis, it was decided that it would be better not to attempt to fly over such dangerous objects at all. An ash cloud can form in unpredictable sizes. If an airliner gets into its epicenter, the engines are quite quickly blocked by ash and fail. When any volcano begins to erupt, air traffic controllers receive warnings about it and provide information to pilots. However, there are still known cases in history when airplanes ended up directly over erupting volcanoes. One of them occurred in 1982 in Hawaii. Then the pilot, despite warnings of an eruption, steered the airplane straight toward the site. In the center of a dark cloud, the airliner's engines failed, although one of them later managed to start. However, the cockpit was completely filled with volcanic ash, making it difficult to land. Fortunately, the airplane managed to land successfully and all people on board were evacuated. Why airplanes don't fly over volcanoes. Bad weather. We often hear this definition in the context of civilian flight restrictions. But what does it mean in the case of volcanoes? It would seem that there was an eruption somewhere, so what? Don't fly over the crater, and there will be no problems. However, in reality, everything is not so unambiguous. What exactly volcanoes are dangerous for airplanes? We will tell you now. Darkness and ash. The main danger to air travel is not even the eruption itself, but volcanic ash, which is carried by the wind into the atmosphere and remains suspended there for quite a long time. Ash clouds can drift for months, traveling many thousands of kilometers. For example, during the eruption of the Krakatoa volcano in Indonesia in 1883, a cloud of unseeded volcanic ash circled the globe twice. This means that an eruption that occurs on one continent can have repercussions for the rest of the world. But if the impact of volcanic ash on the environment is understandable, what's wrong with it? Dangerous clouds. Ash is similar in structure to dry cement, so weather sensors built into airplanes that are set to detect moisture cannot recognize it. Pilots may mistake the ash column for normal clouds or, in extreme cases, thunderstorm clouds that if the airliner still flies into a dangerous cloud. The aircraft turbines, sucking in air at a rate of 150 tons per minute, begin to quickly clog with dry matter. Under the effect of high temperature in the combustion chamber, the ash begins to melt and forms a vitreous mass, which settles on the fuel, automation jets, and cooling deflectors of turbine blades. But that's not all. As the airplane flies through the ash cloud at cruising speed, the dry particles act like sandpaper on the skin and windows of the airliner, literally stripping the paint off the fuselage and breaking the transparency of the windshields. And then everything unfolds like in a terrible dream. First, one by one, the turbines shut down. Then the supercharging system, which maintains the necessary pressure in the cabin, is shut down. Passengers grab oxygen masks thrown in front of them, and pilots try to resuscitate the stalled turbines, preparing for emergency landing in low visibility conditions. Lava swallowing the world. The eruption is dangerous because it poses a potential threat to human health due to high levels of volcanic gas, which can produce smog containing sulfur dioxide. If it reaches residential homes, it can make people with asthma, other respiratory or cardiovascular diseases worse. Another danger lurks in so-called Pele's hairs, formations that look like long golden curls on the ground. They are actually thin glass fibers, named after the volcanic deity Pele, which are formed from gas during an eruption and blown around by the wind, and can cause skin or eye irritation. Jakarta incident. Several serious incidents involving flights over volcanoes have occurred in the past. For example, in June 1982, a British Airways airplane collided with volcanic ash while flying over Indonesia. This incident was referred to as the Jakarta incident. As a result of damage to all 4 engines, the plane quickly lost altitude. But thanks to the experienced crew managed to make an emergency landing without casualties at the Jakarta airport. There were 263 people, passengers plus crew, on board. This and other cases serve as a warning to airlines and pilots to take precautions and avoid flying over active volcanoes.In 2010, a volcanic eruption in Iceland almost paralyzed air travel in Europe. Many flights were canceled, and people suffered because of it. It can be concluded that even for modern airplanes, where everything is thought out in the design to make the flight safe, there is nothing that would protect from volcanic dust. Rambler tells what will happen if the plane flies over a volcano. If the volcano is dormant, nothing will happen. The airplane will fly over it, as over a normal mountain. An erupting lava can be dangerous, as most volcanoes are quite high and lava columns can reach several tens of meters. Volcanic ash is particularly dangerous, as it travels kilometers away from the volcano. The volcano can spew bulkier objects, such as rocks, but they do not stay in the air for long, while the ash is very light and is dispersed by the wind. Flying is dangerous not only over the volcano itself, but also in the area of its eruption, as the wind can carry the ash cloud to the other side. Such data is monitored by meteorological services, and they, in turn, transmit the data to air traffic controllers. The fact is that airplanes cannot distinguish between normal clouds and volcanic ash clouds. When airplane designers did not yet know about the effect of volcanic ash, there were cases when an airliner's engines failed, it began to fall, and a few minutes later its engines started working. In its turbines, they found a mass of vitreous substance that interfered with the engines. The fact is that volcanic ash, in large quantities, can get into the engine of an airplane. It settles in it and melts due to high temperatures, and then forms a vitreous substance. It hardens and prevents the engines from working properly. Unpredictable planet Earth. Why do various natural disasters occur? What does our planet want to tell us? What really bothers and worries it? Recently, there have been more natural disasters around the world: earthquakes, hurricanes, 50-degree heat waves, and forest fires. State of emergency declarations, evacuation notices, and airport suspensions. How one volcano changed the world of an entire civilization. More than 200 years ago, on April 10, 1815, the Tambora volcano in eastern Indonesia suddenly awoke. Then the worst volcanic eruption in the history of mankind took place. An entire civilization with its own language disappeared in one day. This natural cataclysm could provoke global climate change, because after the eruption, the whole planet suffered from severe weather conditions for 3 years. Abnormal heat in China, crop failures in Kentucky, USA, and cholera spread throughout India, aboard cruise ships, commanded by adventurous captains, a group of volcanologists, geologists, and naturalists, along with other passengers, travel to famous archipelagos formed by eruptions. Each movie will feature remarkable aerial shots that will amaze the viewer by revealing spectacular landscapes of water and fire. Since ancient times, mankind has gazed into the night sky. In the last 50 years, man has coped with gravity and, for the first time, managed to travel outside the solar system. This has been an incredible technical achievement. Now, the best minds of mankind are working on spaceships and telescopes that will take us to a new level of knowledge of the depths of the universe. None of us knows what we will find, but we know what we are looking for: proof of life in all its possible forms beyond volcanic eruptions, floods, earthquakes, and tsunamis. For centuries, people have been trying to understand nature and anticipate its intentions. Because man-made accidents, environmental disasters, and disease outbreaks still terrify people, what forecasts does modern science allow to make? Will mankind learn to hold the blow, or will we face a catastrophe of planetary scale? The weather is becoming more extreme and dangerous. Every day there are news reports of devastating cataclysms causing physical, economic, and political damage. The media reports that natural disasters are becoming more devastating year after year. And the reason for this is global warming. But is it really so? The Jakarta incident. The passengers of a British Airways Boeing 747 had to endure all this horror once before. The incident, also known as the Jakarta incident, took place on June 24, 1982, in the sky over the island of Java. The aircraft was on an intercontinental flight from London to Auckland and flew into a column of ash that had risen into the sky following the eruption of the Galunggung volcano. At an altitude of about 12,300 meters, the airliner had a failure of all four engines, after which it began to plan. Rapidly losing altitude, the pilots made several unsuccessful attempts to restart the turbines and began preparing the ship for an emergency landing in the ocean. However, after about 13 minutes, the flight engineer managed to start first one and then the rest of the engines, after which the flight successfully landed at Jakarta Airport. None of the 263 passengers were injured, but after the incident, information about the volcanic eruption was promptly transmitted to all aviation services. Why airplanes don't fly over Tibet and Antarctica. If you look at a real-time aircraft flight map like Flightradar 24, you may notice one interesting feature. Among the abundance of yellow figures on the map, you will find several territories over which there will be almost no aircraft. Tibet and Antarctica will look especially deserted among them. Why do modern airliners avoid these places like cursed ones, Tibet? As we know, modern aviation practically knows no geographical boundaries. However, there are some territories that pilots still prefer to avoid, and one of such places is Tibet. This region, located in Central Asia, is the highest highland in the world, the main territory of which rises above sea level by at least 4 kilometers. The vast majority of the Tibetan Plateau is dotted with mountain ranges and systems. For example, the northern edge of the Tibetan Plateau is flanked by the Kunlun mountain range. To the south rises the Tongla Range, which divides Tibet into two halves. And finally, from the south, the Himalayas, the highest mountain system in the world, encircle Tibet in an arc. 9 of the 14 highest mountains on the planet are located in the Himalayas, and it is this feature that makes the airspace of Tibet difficult for most civilian aircraft to fly over. Formally, it is not prohibited to fly over the Himalayas. To fly over the Himalayas, airlines only need to obtain special permission from the Chinese authorities. However, it is not so easy to do this, as it requires changes to be made to the design of the aircraft, namely to modernize the oxygen units on board. But why do the Chinese authorities require this? Safety first. It's all about passenger safety. As you know, modern airliners fly at an altitude of 10 to 12 kilometers, and they do not fly up here for the sake of beautiful scenery. Flying over a volcano. Articles and reports of the following foreign journals were used in the materials of the rubric: New Scientist, England; Tier and VDI Nachrichten, Germany; Popular Science, USA; Recherche, Science et and Sciences et Avenir, France. The night of June 23rd to 24th, 1982, Boeing 747 of the British company British Airways is flying over the Indonesian island of Java. Suddenly, at an altitude of 12,300 meters, all four engines fail. The plane plummets to the ground. The silent fall seemed endless to the passengers and crew. But 13 minutes later, the engines, coughing, roared again, and the airliner successfully made an unexpected landing in Jakarta. Upon disassembling the turbojet engines, technicians discovered that the turbine blades were covered with a layer of vitreous substance, which caused them to stop spinning. The cause? The plane flew over the erupting Galunggung volcano, which was spewing a column of volcanic ash, many tons of particles up to 2 millimeters across, up to 20 kilometers high. Turbines, sucking in 150 tons of air per minute, clogged with this dust. At a temperature of 900 degrees Celsius inside the engines, it sintered on the blades into a vitreous mass, stopping the turbines. When the airplane left the volcanic cloud, the vibration partially shook off the glassy crust, and the engine started working again. Though not at full power. On the ground, it was discovered that the fuselage and especially the cockpit and porthole windows had been sandpapered. On July 13th of the same year, another Boeing almost crashed in the same area for the same reason. In total, over the past 16 years, about 90 airplanes have experienced difficulties when flying in the area of active volcanoes. How can we guard against this danger? Airplane radars cannot distinguish between a normal cloud and a volcanic cloud. That is why the World Meteorological Organization has started since last year to constantly monitor volcanoes on air routes. The incident also happened to a Boeing 747 over Redoute, an airplane accident that occurred on Friday, December 15, 1989. The KLM Boeing 747-406M airliner, less than 6 months old at the time, was on flight KL 867 on the Amsterdam-Anchorage-Tokyo route. But while descending towards Anchorage Airport, flew through a dense cloud of volcanic ash from the erupting Redoute volcano, causing all four engines to fail and leaving the aircraft on standby power. After losing over 4,000 meters of altitude, the crew was able to restart the engines and landed the plane safely at the airport. None of the 245 people on board were injured. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel.